Welcome and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. On the program today, we're going to be talking about a very unique and very new method known as the Dalian Method. For those of you out there who are trying to find ways that you can release patterns and emotions that have been imprinted into the body and the energy for years and even lifetimes, this is a new way that you can detoxify from the layers of repressed fear, anger, and hurtful negative emotions and belief patterns that your inner consciousness has trapped inside of it. Many people try psychotherapy. There are many other modalities out there, but this is considered to be not only new, but something that actually is very unique that doesn't draw from any other known tradition out there. It is known as the Dalian Method. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today, practitioner and founder Mada Eliza Dalian. Mada, thank you for joining us here on the program today.
Hi, Daniel. Thanks for having me.
Tell us how this all started for you and how this became to be a very unique modality.
Well, it all started with my own search to find who I am, and I started very early on. And through meditation, introspection, I had a few very profound experiences which helped me see that everything that we believe in, everything we think is a reality, is actually just a fleeting reality, and in a sense the only true reality is our being, which is never born and never dies. And when I realized that I'm not my body, I'm not my emotions, I'm not my thoughts, and I'm just a temporary visitor on this planet, but I truly belong to the universe, which ultimately is all made of joy, and there is nothing in the universe that is rejected. Everything that exists, including all our emotions and thoughts and struggles and the body and what we call good and bad, it's all part of the same oneness, and no part can be denied. With that experience, then it took a few years to integrate it in my body and in my life. And then I reconnected with the ability that I had as a child, which was to be able to hear the thoughts and emotions that were in people's bodies and in their energies. And realizing that what people normally communicate, what they say, is not exactly what they feel inside. Then after this experience, I was probably around 40, past 40 by this time. I had my experience when I was 33. And then I thought, well, I'd like to explore and experiment to see, is there a way, can there be a way to find a way to access those repressed thoughts and feelings, the true ones that people are actually holding in their body, and release them so that people can come to understand that they're not all these traumas or experiences or thoughts or beliefs that they have come to conclude based on their life experiences. And this is where I began exploring with people. And through that exploration and working with people with their body and obviously hearing those thoughts that are in the body and working with that, I came up with this system. It almost revealed itself that I realized once I used the breath and I used the out loud expression of those repressed beliefs and repressed thoughts and repressed emotions, which are everywhere in the body. It's not just in our mind, in the brain. Then what happens is like we're releasing all the clouds that keep the sun that's within each person, their consciousness, hidden. Suddenly that consciousness reveals itself. And with the consciousness revealing, it automatically erases those beliefs from the body's cellular memory. So ultimately, it's consciousness that creates the healing, because what we're healing actually is out of the veil the belief that we are our body, our mind, our emotions.
Now, you say that most modalities are missing a key component. Tell us what that is.
Can you repeat your question, please? I didn't quite get it.
It's known that you say that most healing modalities are missing one key component. What is this component?
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. Well, that key component is consciousness. And what happens is that through healing, what normally people think as healing is they use the part of the ego mind, and which is wounded, and then they use the same ego trying to heal what is wounded. So in other words, the ego is trying to heal itself, but it is an impossibility. The only healing happens when we step out of the ego and we recognize our being. We recognize that we are consciousness. Once we recognize that we're that inner space that is absolutely vast, and in that inner space is where the unknown is as well. And normally the ego is afraid of the unknown. So the ego is afraid of death. Once we come to realize that I am this being which can never die, and this cannot be realized by the mind because the mind is not capable to have that understanding. Only consciousness, self-awareness is capable to have that understanding. Once we get to experience it, and ultimately it's experience that reveals it, then we become a knower of this truth. And so with this system, it allows people to experience their being. Instead of trying to heal something with the part of the mind, so ultimately it does not use the mind. The system does not use the mind. It bypasses the mind, works directly with the body, with the beliefs that are repressed, with the emotions that are repressed. And I must also emphasize that everything that's repressed in the body creates energetic blockages and creates pain. It creates illness and creates our sense of anxiety and inner unrest. So once these are directly addressed, not through the mind, but through accessing precisely what those beliefs are and releasing them, that's how consciousness then comes in. Self-awareness happens automatically. And healing then also spontaneously happens automatically without really working hard at it with the mind.
Now, in your experience, maybe for the listeners out there, we know the term or the word ego. How would you describe what the ego is?
The ego is like a shell. If you imagine a seed has a shell. So within that shell, there is the potentiality of the seed to become a flower. So the ego is the shell that protects the potentiality until the flower is ready to manifest itself, to fulfill its purpose, if you will. So when the seed is not put in the soil, then obviously it stays as a seed form, so that ego protects it. But once the seed is placed in the right soil, then the shell starts to break down. And then it starts to find a way for that seedling to break through and start growing. The same thing is with our ego. Every child comes with an ego. We need that ego. Ego is not a bad thing. So I'm never against the ego. In my book, In Search of the Miraculous Healing in the Consciousness, I speak about the phases of development of ego consciousness and how they develop simultaneously, and how we must transform the wounded ego into the positive, healthy ego before we could let it go. So in a sense, when that ego is protecting the energy of the child, protecting the body, it's a necessity. As the child starts growing up, the child is having experiences, but alongside those experiences, the child also makes conclusions. Those conclusions become beliefs that then stay imprinted in the body. Just for example, at the time of birth, and time of birth is very crucial for all of us. The way we're born is very crucial because that's the first conclusion we make about life. And when we're well taken care of in mother's womb and then we're thrown out into the world is scary, and depending on how we come, what kind of experience we have at that moment, we make a conclusion about the world. Now that conclusion then becomes a program that's imprinted in the body's cellular memory, and it will be running your entire life until you access it and see that, this is the conclusion I made. The world is not the truth. The reality is not such. So if I'm born with fear of this big unknown world and I'm being pushed out, which most people, probably 99.9 people, have to work through this fear. And now realizing that, that was just that experience and conclusion, because now I experienced my true being, which is full of potentiality, which is hidden in that unknown, and I can only live it moment to moment. So being in the now, living in the now, means having that recognition that whatever mind is wanting or planning, it's only the mind that's programmed to think in a certain goal-oriented way. But reality is full of surprises. And I don't know what existence is going to put in front of me next moment. All I need to learn to do is be present moment to moment, to recognize my lessons, to recognize what existence is trying to show me, and also to recognize the opportunities. So that is the process that I call development of ego and consciousness simultaneously, so that we come to a place where the ego becomes ripe enough and healthy enough that we can say, now I understand, this is the ego, this is part of the shell that was protecting me, so that I can come to this awareness, to this understanding, and I can let this go. I don't need to be afraid of death, because death does not exist. It simply was a concept within the ego, because in truth, in reality, ego does die when we let go of the body. So your question, what is the ego made up of? Ego is made up of, first of all, we need the body in order to have that shell. And within that shell, the shell is made up of the thoughts, the emotions that think, I am the center of the universe. So everything revolves around me. So that's me, I am, and I'm hurt, or I'm alone, or I'm afraid. All these statements are part of the ego.
Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of times people use the ego to protect themselves, and it's really the ego they are protecting. How is it that our listeners can become aware that this is beginning to happen and release themselves from that, so, as you say, they can be more present, more conscious?
Well, first of all, we need to realize what is trying to protect itself. And ego always tries to protect itself. And what is the ego protecting itself from? Let's say somebody feels fear inside. And if you're identified with that fear, then you're identified with the ego. And then, the ego would say, I don't want to go into that fear. I don't want to feel hurt again. I don't want this to repeat again. So I'm not going to open myself up. I'm not going to be in surrender and let go. Then the person unknowingly is keeping their ego protected and alive, instead of doing the work of understanding these patterns, because these patterns are created by the ego, by the mind. That's why I say, in order for us to come to true healing, we have to bypass the mind, and this method bypasses the mind. And any type of healing that we do or have done up to now, in a sense, I feel, has prepared people for this method, because every time in our history brings tools that our consciousness is ready to work with. I've developed this system in 1997, but it is only now that more and more people are understanding the depth of it and the genius of the system, how it can bypass the mind. Because in 1997, there were very few people that were finding me, working with me, and they were coming because they had physical issues, and then they would see the physical issues solved. I would work with them once or twice, and suddenly issues that they've worked or suffered with for 50 years disappear, and then they feel content, and they would stop there. But now the people who are coming, even though they have physical issues to work with, there's more understanding that I also want to transform this ego mind that has been keeping me small. I want to transform my fears. I want to really be liberated. The word liberated, this is the ancient culture where the mystics know, they call it liberation. Liberation means liberation from attachments to and identification to with the ego and all the aspects of the ego. So now, this method not only helps to heal the body, but people are realizing it is also a system that can help them transform the ego. It can help them find their consciousness, be liberated from the shackles that keep their consciousness small, and with experience of expansion. And this is literally, people start to experience expansion of their energy, then consciousness expands to other realms to understand that this physical reality is not be-all, and it's not the end. This is just a passing. I'm passing through it so I can learn my lessons. So now people are using this method and becoming, more and more people becoming interested about it, because it also helps people learn the lessons that they need to learn so that the consciousness in that learning can start expanding.
Now, it seems to me that as people engage with this modality that you've created here, that fearless living seems to be the outcome. Is that typically what happens?
Absolutely. Exactly. That's exactly what happens, because once the beliefs that I'm wounded or I'm alone or I'm scared, they are released, people immediately connect with their inner strengths, because consciousness and inner strength go hand in hand. It's one and the same thing. Once somebody becomes conscious, they also recognize their inner strengths. And with that recognition, then you realize, I don't need to please anyone anymore, because I'm living my own life and no one can live it for me. So therefore, trying to please people so that they accept me, this is what was keeping me in the wounded state of the ego. Now I can say, I'm living my life the way I choose. And this is how people can find their true purpose. Because how can you find your true purpose if you haven't found your true power, inner power, that says, I can walk my talk, I can sing my song, and this is how you can actually manifest your purpose. It does not happen with the mind. It happens with inner strength and with the inner knower that knows, I have something unique to offer, and I'm not going to depend on other people's approval.
Now, it seems that people who have been healed with this method say that it can advance psychotherapy to a more evolved level. How is that?
Well, that's exactly how, and many psychotherapists are interested in this, psychologists, doctors, and I've started training. One thing I need to mention, that once I was working with people one-on-one and I devised the method, then I realized that the times are moving very fast, and you notice that, right? So it's almost like a blip, and right. Suddenly... Mm-hmm. And the reason the time is moving fast is because our consciousness is increasing. It's not that the time is changing. The time only is, the concept of time is there only depending on how long it will take to manifest something. So now, with technology advancement, the time is quickening. So now we can push a button and we can come to an end result, which would have taken us probably days or years or weeks to come to. So that's why the concept of time is changing. That's why everything seems quickening. And this means that our consciousness is also able to come to start living more in the present. Because in the present, it's only moment to moment. There's no past, there's no future. So with that, all the healing modalities that have been here before have been working within that concept of prolonged time. Now we need to match the speed of technology, and this method is a technology of the future that matches that speed. Now, what I was trying to also explain is when I was working with people one-on-one, I realized after certain years that I need to create a self-healing version of the system so people can use on their own whenever they need. And this is also a way to empower each person to realize that I don't need someone else to take my hand and walk miles and miles. I can actually empower myself and use this to come to the awareness that I need to come to very quickly, and I can work with any issue that arises at any moment. So that's what was in last year at the end of October, about this time, so it's about a year ago, where the self-healing system was released as a book and 2 CDs where people can practice. And this is not just listening. People have to follow the instructions when they hear on the CD, because I guide them through the steps, step by step. Of course, when I'm working with someone, it's a little bit more spontaneous. But for a self-healing version, I had to create something more generic so it can work with everyone. And frankly, I've been surprised myself with many, many experimentations how quickly and powerfully it works as a self-healing system. And I also realized that some people still need the help of someone else to guide them through or take them through the system. So therefore, I also started training facilitators who have been, who are practicing with other modalities. And there's doctors, like I said, there are counselors, psychologists, yoga teachers who are now becoming facilitators. So I'm also training them to be able to facilitate with this method. So those people who are in between and they're not quite sure they can do it on their own or they need some kind of guidance. So there are facilitators available, and I continue to train people, and this is how then more and more people will understand the intricacies and the depth of this system, because it's, even though on the outside it might seem very simple, someone needs to know the intricacies of it because it works with the unconscious and with the layers of the unconscious that are hidden in the body.
So I'm hearing that it sounds like this is a way for us to release repressed emotions, thoughts, beliefs, if you will. So how quickly does this occur and how deep does it go? I mean, is this something you have to do daily for a long time, or is it quicker than that?
Oh, that's a good question. The transformation, the release, well, first of all, you need to know how to access what's repressed, because the mind does not know what's in the unconscious. So the method helps you access those repressed thoughts and emotions and then release them. And because we're working with the entire body and we're going back and forth through the body, and this includes everything, all the chakras, the whole body from head to toe, then the releasing of the layers happens on many levels. And then many layers come up automatically. It's like once you take off the top layer, the layer underneath it automatically surfaces. Just imagine an onion. Once you peel the top layer of the onion, then you see the next layer of the onion. Then you peel that layer of the onion, and then there's another layer. And you see those layers as you're peeling them one by one, to the point where you keep peeling, and then you end up with that emptiness, and then there's no layers left. So this is precisely what the method does, and you don't need to work with it every day, because once one layer is peeled, then you need time to integrate the new awareness that comes in that says, okay, now I see what I peeled. I see that was an old thought, and it doesn't belong to me. I can release it now. And once I release it now, I also understand that now I suddenly understood I don't have to please anyone, as an example. Now you need to integrate that awareness into your daily life, which means I also, in the book, give the suggestion, or it's almost like a must, that you must create a homework for yourself to manifest this awareness into your daily life. So how do you manifest it? Then a situation arises, and your old pattern comes to your mind that I have to say something to please this person instead of saying what I truly feel. And then you catch yourself and go, oh yeah, now I see, that's the pattern that's been playing all my life. In that moment, the way you manifest your new awareness, you tell yourself, this is the homework, you tell yourself, no, I'm not going to please anymore. I'm going to actually connect with myself. How do I feel? This is how I feel. And I'm not going to be afraid to say exactly how I feel. So that's how you put it into action. You have to put your new awareness into action. Once you put it into action, then you start feeling that this was not the end of the world. I was only thinking and afraid that the person would reject me, but when I said what I felt, the person didn't reject me. And suddenly you go, oh, so this was just my old belief, and then it becomes easier for you to start verbalizing, expressing how you feel, your inner truth, instead of trying to cover it up or trying or thinking, well, I don't want to say this because I don't want to hurt someone. And once you've integrated that in your whole body and you start feeling your inner strength, then something else will arise and, okay, now I want to explore a bit more. And that's where you could do another session. And I normally recommend for people, if it's a deep issue, and some issues come with, it's a pattern from many lifetimes, then person can do it the next day or a few days later, next week. Otherwise, you could do it once a week, you could do it once a month. It's very individual. So it's not like you have to do it every day. But alongside, I highly recommend that people also meditate, because through meditation, we increase our ability to watch and witness. And that's very important, because through witnessing is how we disidentify from those beliefs that were running in our body, in our energy. So even though this system also helps you come to that place of seeing and disidentifying, and that's the key element that must happen, so that consciousness can then say, I see it. Now I'm disidentified. It's automatic again. It's not like the mind thinking I have to disidentify. That's why I say it's very intricate. So it's even difficult many times to describe or explain these intricacies till somebody experiences it. But in short, there's an integration time, and you don't have to do it every day. And incorporating a meditation practice, which could be a daily practice, and I love using active meditations. I combine in all my workshops and online courses active meditations, the Osho active meditations, alongside with the Dalian Method, so that increasing of the inner witness can simultaneously grow, and then people can go deeper into the darkness of the unconscious without the fear.
Wow, well, this all sounds so refreshing and encouraging. Is there a website our listeners can go and discover more about what this is all about?
My website is madadalian.com. That's MADADALIAN.com. And there's a schedule of events that would show what is happening. And I'll be in Portland actually this weekend. So Friday I have a talk, and I'll do a presentation and a short little demonstration of what I'm talking about, so there's more understanding, and that's happening at the New Renaissance Bookstore. And Saturday there'll be a 4-hour workshop where people can actually experience the self-healing system on their own, and that would give them an understanding, a little bit of a more comfort zone that then they can take it and to work with it on their own. And I've gone even to the extent of people who take the courage to work with this system. They buy the book and the CD kit. I'm offering them a free lifetime webinar, which means once they work with it, and any question that arises with regards to the practice of this method, every other month I have a free webinar. They can be on that webinar and ask their questions. This way they're not just left on their own. So if someone wants to, any question about their process and something comes up, and many questions arise as a result of people starting to practice with this, so that's available for people as well.
Well, Mada, thank you so much for joining us here on the program today and bringing this new enlightened method to a world that certainly can use quite a bit of healing.
My pleasure.
We want to thank you, the listeners out there, for tuning in. You can also discover more by visiting us at beyond50radio.com. That is the number 50. Sign up for our free weekly e-newsletter as well. Thank you again for joining us. This is the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis, and remember, live your day past halfway.